6 months isn't a mistake, Lara. It's a choice. You chose him. Now I'm choosing me.
You can't be serious. We can work this out. It was just...
The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the rooftop bar, sending crystal shards skittering across the polished surface like frozen tears. The sound cut through the corporate Christmas party chatter, drawing stares from my wife's colleagues as they watched Lara's face drain of color. My wedding ring sat at the bottom of what remained of her drink, catching the neon light from the city below. "Colton? What the hell are you doing?" Lara hissed, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping the stem of the broken glass. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I adjusted my wire-rimmed glasses and gave her my best customer service smile, the one I'd perfected during 8 years of marriage and 12 years of fixing other people's computer problems. Just returning something that doesn't belong to me anymore. Grant Hollister, her boss and tonight's arm candy, stepped closer. At 45, he had the kind of artificial confidence that came from corner offices and expense accounts. His cologne was expensive, his suit was tailored, and his smirk was practiced. Everything about him screamed success, from his silver hair to his Italian leather shoes. "Look, buddy," Grant said, placing a protective hand on Lara's lower back. "Maybe you should go home and sleep this off." I laughed, actually laughed, which seemed to surprise everyone within earshot. "Sleep it off? Grant, right? I'm stone cold sober. First time in months, actually. Amazing what clarity feels like." The December wind whipped across the rooftop, carrying the scent of snow and exhaust fumes from the streets below. Seattle's skyline glittered around us, all glass and steel and broken promises. The party continued behind us, but I could feel the weight of curious stares. "Colton, please," Lara whispered, her voice taking on that pleading tone she used when she wanted something. "Can we talk about this at home?" "Home?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "You mean the apartment I just signed over to you? Consider it my Christmas gift. You've been sleeping with your boss for 6 months. Might as well have a nice place to do it." Grant's face flushed red. "Now listen here, you little..." "Little what?" I stepped closer, close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath. At 5'9", I was 3 inches shorter than him, but I'd learned something working in cybersecurity. The most dangerous attacks come from the inside, from the people you never see coming. "Little nobody? That's what you called me last week, right? When you thought I couldn't hear you through Lara's office door?" The color drained from both their faces. "Oh yes, I heard everything. How I'm boring. How I'm going nowhere. How Lara deserves better." I looked around at the crowd of their colleagues, all pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "You know what? You're absolutely right. She does deserve better, and so do I." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, thick with papers. "Divorce documents. Already filed. Already served. Merry Christmas, sweetheart." Lara's hands shook as she took the envelope. "You can't be serious. We can work this out. It was just... Just what? A mistake? A moment of weakness?" I shook my head. 6 months isn't a mistake, Lara. It's a choice. You chose him. Now I'm choosing me." Amanda Chen, Lara's best friend and the office gossip queen, pushed through the crowd. She was smiling, but there was something predatory in her eyes. "Colton, honey, maybe you should think about this. Divorce is so... final. So is adultery." I straightened my tie, a cheap polyester thing from Target that suddenly felt like armor. "But don't worry, Amanda. I'm sure you'll take good care of her. You always have." Something flickered across Amanda's face, too quick to interpret. I turned back to Lara and Grant. "Enjoy the party. Enjoy each other. Enjoy explaining to HR why the company's network security footage shows you two in the supply closet last Tuesday." Grant went pale. "You wouldn't dare." "Wouldn't I?" I pulled out my phone and held up a thumb drive. 12 years in IT, Grant. You'd be amazed what gets backed up to the cloud these days." The crowd had grown larger, forming a loose circle around us. I could see phones coming out, recording everything. In the morning, this would be all over social media. By Monday, it would be water cooler legend. Perfect. "You're making a huge mistake," Grant said, his voice low and threatening. "I have connections. I can make your life very difficult." My life is already difficult. It has been for 6 months, ever since my wife started coming home late, taking mysterious phone calls and flinching every time I touched her. I looked directly at Lara. At least now I know why. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "Colton, I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you." "No, you don't. You love what I represent: security, stability, someone to pay half the rent while you figure out what you really want. I gestured toward Grant. Turns out what you really want is him, so take him, he's all yours. I started walking toward the elevator, then stopped and turned back. The entire party was watching now, a sea of faces illuminated by the city lights and the glow of their phones. Oh, and Grant, you might want to check your Mercedes. Parking garage security is notoriously bad around here, lots of blind spots. The elevator doors closed on their shocked faces, and I finally allowed myself to smile. It felt good. It felt like the first genuine emotion I'd experienced in months. As the elevator descended, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to a number I hadn't used in years. Jake, it's Colton. Remember that favor you owe me? Time to collect. The response came back immediately. About damn time. What do you need? I typed back. Lessons. The kind they don't teach in computer science. Meet me tomorrow. Warehouse district. Bring gloves. The elevator reached the parking garage, and I walked toward my 10-year-old Honda Civic. It wasn't much to look at. Dented bumper, faded paint, a crack in the windshield that I kept meaning to fix, but it was mine. Paid for, reliable, unlike some people. As I drove past Grant's gleaming Mercedes, I couldn't help but notice the 4 flat tires and the creative artwork someone had done with a key along the driver's side. The security camera above his parking spot had been mysteriously repositioned to face the wall. Funny how technology could be so unreliable sometimes. Monday morning hit Pinnacle Marketing like a digital hurricane. I sat in my cramped cubicle in the IT department, 3 floors below the executive suites, and watched the chaos unfold through security monitors and network traffic logs. It was better than cable television. The footage had leaked sometime over the weekend, not the supply closet video, that was still my ace in the hole, but someone had recorded the entire rooftop confrontation and posted it to every social media platform imaginable. The hashtag #LancierChampagneRing was trending locally. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Can we talk? Coffee at 10? I deleted it without responding. At 8:47 a.m., my computer chimed with an urgent help desk ticket. Network access issues, G. Hollister, Executive Suite. I smiled and marked it as low priority. At 9:15, Lara appeared at my cubicle. She looked like she hadn't slept, which was probably true. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing yesterday's clothes. We need to talk, she said, her voice hoarse. No, we don't. I didn't look up from my screen. My lawyer will handle everything from here. Colton, please, I know I screwed up, but... Screwed up? I finally looked at her, and she took a step back. Maybe it was something in my eyes. Lara, you didn't screw up. You made a calculated decision to trade up. The only thing you screwed up was getting caught. That's not true. I never meant for this to happen. You never meant to get caught. There's a difference. I stood up, and she backed away further. You want to know what I've been doing this weekend, besides filing divorce papers and changing the locks? Her face went white. You changed the locks? I've been analyzing metadata. Do you know what metadata is, Lara? It's the digital fingerprint left behind by every electronic communication, emails, texts, photos, hotel reservations, restaurant charges. I pulled out a thick folder and set it on my desk. 6 months of metadata, all legally obtained from our joint accounts and devices. She stared at the folder like it might bite her. The Fairmont Hotel, 17 times, always the same room, always charged to your corporate card. I flipped open the folder, revealing printed emails and credit card statements. The lingerie purchases from Victoria's Secret. The birth control pills, which was interesting since we've been trying to have a baby for 2 years. Colton, I can explain. The best part? The group chat. You, Amanda, and 3 other women from your department. 6 months of messages about your hot boss and your boring husband, and how you were going to trade up as soon as the timing was right. Lara's legs seemed to give out, and she collapsed into the visitor chair beside my desk. How did you get our group chat? Cloud backup. You used our shared Apple account, remember? For convenience. I sat back down and returned to my computer. Everything you said, every plan you made, every lie you told, it's all backed up to the cloud. Forever. You're going to use that in the divorce? I'm going to use everything. The adultery, the financial infidelity, the emotional abuse. I looked at her again, and this time I saw fear in her eyes. Did you really think I was too stupid to figure it out? Too weak to fight back? Before she could answer, Grant appeared at the entrance to the IT department. He looked even worse than Lara. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie was crooked, and there were dark circles under his eyes. We need to talk, he said, his voice carrying across the cubicle farm. Every head in the department turned to watch. This was going to be good. I don't think we do, I replied, not bothering to stand up. Grant strode over, his expensive shoes clicking on the linoleum floor. You think you're clever? You think this little stunt is going to accomplish anything? It already has. Your car needed some fresh air in the tires. Consider it a public service. His face turned red. That was you? Prove it. I was home all weekend watching Netflix. I have the streaming history to prove it. You little shit, You'll what? I stood up slowly, and Grant took a step back. Maybe it was the audience. Half the IT department was watching now, along with several people from other floors who had found excuses to visit. Fire me? Good luck explaining to the board why you're targeting the guy who caught you embezzling company resources. I'm not embezzling anything. Really? Because according to my analysis of network usage and expense reports, you've been using company time and resources for personal activities. Hotel reservations made on company computers, personal emails sent through company servers, company credit card used for romantic dinners. I gestured toward Lara. With a subordinate employee. That's harassment, misuse of corporate resources, and violation of company ethics policies. Grant's face went from red to pale. You can't prove any of that. I held up another thumb drive. Digital forensics is my specialty, Grant. I can prove all of it. The crowd around us had grown larger. I could see people from HR pushing through, drawn by the commotion. Perfect timing. Mr. Hollister. Linda Morrison from Human Resources appeared at Grant's shoulder. Could we speak with you privately? Grant looked around at the crowd, then back at me. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I sat back down and returned to my computer. Enjoy your meeting with HR. I hear they have some interesting questions about expense reports and security footage. As Grant and Linda walked away, Lara remained in the chair beside my desk. She was crying now, quiet tears that she tried to hide behind her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught? You're sorry there are consequences? You're sorry your perfect plan fell apart. I saved my work and logged out of my computer. But you're not sorry you did it. If you could go back and do it again, the only thing you'd change is being more careful. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. That's not true. Isn't it? If Grant was single, if there was no company policy, if you could have divorced me quietly and moved on to your upgrade without any drama, would you change anything? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. That's what I thought. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I'm taking a long lunch. When I come back, I expect you to be gone. Don't come to my apartment. Don't call me. Don't text me. Any communication goes through lawyers from now on. I walked toward the elevator, leaving her sitting there in front of the entire IT department. As the doors closed, I could hear her crying harder. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Warehouse, 1 hour. Time to teach you how to fight back. I smiled and typed back, on my way. The elevator descended, carrying me away from my old life and towards something new, something that felt like power. Jake's warehouse sat in the industrial district like a forgotten relic from Seattle's manufacturing past. From the outside, it looked abandoned, broken windows, rusted loading docks, weeds growing through cracks in the concrete. But I knew better. I'd helped Jake set up the network infrastructure 2 years ago, back when he was just getting started. What had begun as a legitimate boxing gym had evolved into something more interesting, a place where white-collar workers came to learn blue-collar solutions to their problems. The side door was unlocked, as promised. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into a training facility that would have made Fight Club jealous. Boxing rings, heavy bags, weight equipment, and in the back corner, a small office where Jake ran his real business, teaching soft men how to become hard. Colton! Jake's voice boomed across the space. He emerged from behind a heavy bag wearing boxing gloves and a grin. At 6'2" and 200 pounds of muscle, Jake looked like what I might have become if I'd chosen physical labor over intellectual pursuits. About damn time you called. We'd been roommates at the University of Washington, me studying computer science, him studying business until he dropped out junior year to become a professional fighter. We'd stayed in touch sporadically over the years, but I'd never taken him up on his standing offer to teach me how to handle myself. Thanks for this, I said, looking around at the equipment. I wasn't sure you'd remember me. Remember you? Dude, you saved my ass in statistics class. Besides, I've been waiting 12 years for you to realize that sometimes problems can't be solved with a keyboard. He pulled off his gloves and tossed them onto a nearby bench. Tell me what's going on. I gave him the condensed version. The affair, the divorce, the confrontation at the party. Jake listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as the story progressed. So let me get this straight, he said when I finished. Your wife cheats on you with her boss, they mock you behind your back, and now the boss is threatening you. That's the short version, yeah? And you want to learn how to fight? I want to learn how to win. I looked around the warehouse again. I've spent my whole life being the nice guy, the safe choice, the one who fixes problems quietly and doesn't make waves. Where did it get me? Jake nodded slowly. Divorced and disrespected. I get it. But fighting isn't just about throwing punches, Colton. It's about mindset. It's about making your opponent believe you're willing to go further than they are. I'm listening. Good, because lesson 1 starts now. He walked over to the equipment locker and pulled out a pair of boxing gloves. Put these on. For the next 2 hours, Jake put me through hell. Basic punches, footwork, defensive positions, and most importantly, how to take a hit without falling down. By the end of the session, I was covered in sweat and my entire body ached. But I felt more alive than I had in months. Not bad for a first-timer, Jake said, handing me a towel. You've got decent reflexes, and you're not afraid of getting hit. That's half the battle. What's the other half? Knowing when to hit back. He sat down on a bench and gestured for me to join him. Tell me about this Grant guy. What makes him tick? I thought about it while I caught my breath. Pride. Status. He's the kind of guy who thinks his success makes him untouchable. Everything is about image with him. The car, the clothes, the office, the women. So he's never been in a real fight. Jake grinned. Those are the easiest ones to break. They're all front, no foundation. I'm not looking to break anyone. I just want... What? Justice? Revenge? Respect? Jake leaned forward. Let me tell you something about respect, Colton. It's not given. It's taken. And sometimes, taking it requires getting your hands dirty. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amanda again. Lara is a mess. Grant got suspended pending investigation. Can we please talk? I showed the message to Jake. That's Lara's best friend. She's been trying to reach me all day. The one who was in the group chat? The one who knew about the affair and didn't tell you? Yeah. She wants something. They always do when their world starts falling apart. Jake stood up and walked over to a whiteboard covered in workout schedules. You know what I think. I think she's not as innocent as she pretends to be. What do you mean? Think about it. She's the office gossip, right? She knows everything about everyone. She knew about your wife's affair, but she didn't tell you. Why? I hadn't considered that angle. Maybe she was being loyal to Lara. Or maybe she was playing a longer game. Jake erased the workout schedules and picked up a marker. In my experience, the people who know the most secrets are usually the ones with the most to hide. He drew a simple diagram on the board. Circles representing me, Lara, Grant, and Amanda, with lines connecting them showing relationships and information flow. Look at this from Amanda's perspective. She's friends with your wife, works in the same department as Grant, and has access to all the office gossip. She could have warned you about the affair months ago, but she didn't. Why? I studied the diagram, my programmer's mind starting to see the patterns. Because she benefited from it somehow. Exactly. The question is how. Jake capped the marker and turned back to me. I think you should meet with her, but not as the victim looking for answers, as the predator looking for prey. I'm not a predator, Jake. You are now. You just don't know it yet. He walked over to the equipment locker and pulled out a small digital camera. Take this. Record everything. You'd be amazed what people will admit when they think they're helping. I took the camera, surprised by how light it was. This feels like overkill. Does it? Your wife spent 6 months planning to leave you. Her boss threatened your job. Her best friend is suddenly desperate to talk to you after ignoring your marriage for years. Jake's expression grew serious. They declared war on you, Colton. They just didn't expect you to fight back. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. I answered it cautiously. Is this Colton Merrick? The voice was female, older, with a slight southern accent. Yes. Who is this? My name is Patricia Hollister. I believe you know my husband, Grant. I looked at Jake, who was listening intently. Mrs. Hollister, Yes, I know Grant. I think we should meet. There are things you need to know about my husband, about his relationship with your wife, about what he's planning to do to you. What kind of things? The kind that are better discussed in person. Can you meet me tonight? There's a coffee shop called Grind on Pine Street. 8 o'clock. I looked at Jake again. He was nodding enthusiastically. I'll be there, I said. Come alone. And Mr. Merrick? Bring a recorder. You're going to want to remember everything I tell you. The line went silent. Jake was grinning like a shark. This just got interesting. Grant's wife wants to meet. She says he's planning something. Of course he is. Guys like Grant don't take public humiliation well. He's probably planning to get you fired, maybe blacklisted in the industry. Jake walked over to his desk and pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. Digital recorder, military grade. It'll pick up conversations from 20 feet away. I took the recorder, adding it to my growing collection of spy gadgets. I feel like I'm in a movie. You are. The question is whether it's going to be a tragedy or an action thriller. Jake clapped me on the shoulder. My money's on thriller. You've got that look. What look? The look of a man who's tired of being stepped on, the look of someone who's ready to step back. He walked me toward the door. Remember what I taught you today. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being willing to go further than the other guy expects. As I drove home through the Seattle traffic, I thought about Jake's words. For 12 years, I'd been the predictable one, the safe choice, the guy who solved problems quietly and never made waves. But predictable men don't win fights. They don't get respect. They get cheated on and discarded when something better comes along. Maybe it was time to become unpredictable. Grind Coffee on Pine Street was exactly the kind of place you'd choose for a clandestine meeting. Dimly lit, filled with the kind of ambient noise that made eavesdropping difficult, and populated by laptop-wielding freelancers who minded their own business. Patricia Hollister was nothing like I'd expected. Grant's wife was elegant in the way that only comes from old money, understated jewelry, perfectly tailored clothes, and the kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. She was probably 50, with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She was also furious. "Mr. Merrick," she said as I approached her corner table, "thank you for coming. Please, sit down." I settled into the chair across from her, the digital recorder in my jacket pocket feeling like a lead weight. "Mrs. Hollister, I have to say this is unexpected." "I'm sure it is. Can I get you something? Coffee? Tea?" "Coffee, black." I studied her face, looking for any resemblance to Grant's smug arrogance. There wasn't any. "Mrs. Hollister, why did you want to meet?" She waited until I had my coffee before answering. "Because my husband is a fool, and fools do dangerous things when they're cornered." "I'm not sure I follow." "Grant called me Saturday night, drunk and ranting about some IT nobody who was trying to ruin his life. He spent an hour describing in graphic detail what he was going to do to you, getting you fired, blacklisted, possibly arrested on trumped-up charges." She sipped her tea calmly. "He also spent considerable time bragging about his affair with your wife." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Don't be. It wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last." She set down her cup and leaned forward. "Mr. Merrick, my husband has been cheating on me for 15 years. Your wife is just the latest in a very long line." "Then why are you still married to him?" "Because divorce is expensive, and Grant has been very careful about hiding his assets. Also because I've been waiting for the right opportunity to destroy him completely." She smiled, and for the first time, I saw something predatory in her expression. "I believe that opportunity has finally arrived." I reached for my coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Grant has finally picked on someone with the skills to fight back, someone with access to the very systems he's been using to cover his tracks." She opened her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Someone who might be interested in seeing his complete financial records for the past 5 years. The envelope sat between us like a loaded weapon. "Mrs. Hollister, I can't accept stolen documents." "They're not stolen. They're photocopies of documents from my own home, created by a wife who has legal access to all marital assets." She pushed the envelope closer to me. "Everything in there was obtained legally, and everything in there is admissible in court." I opened the envelope and glanced at the contents. Bank statements, investment records, property deeds, and what looked like contracts for offshore accounts. "This is evidence that my husband has been systematically hiding marital assets for years, money that should have been disclosed in our prenuptial agreement, money that he's been using to fund his affairs and his lifestyle." She leaned back in her chair. "Money that he's been embezzling from Pinnacle Marketing." That got my attention. "Embezzling?" "Fake consulting contracts, inflated expense reports, kickbacks from vendors. It's all documented in there. Grant has been stealing from the company for 3 years, and he's been using the money to maintain his image as a successful executive." I closed the envelope, my mind racing. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you have something I need, access to Pinnacle's computer systems, and because Grant has made the mistake of threatening someone with the technical skills to expose him." She finished her tea and set the cup down with a soft clink. I'm proposing an alliance, Mr. Merrick. You help me prove my husband's crimes, and I help you make sure he never threatens you again. What kind of help? The kind that comes from 25 years of marriage to a sociopath. I know how Grant thinks, how he operates, and most importantly, how to manipulate him into making mistakes. She stood up and put on her coat. Think about it. But don't think too long. Grant is meeting with his lawyer tomorrow morning to discuss filing harassment charges against you. Harassment charges? Based on the damage to his car and the public humiliation at the Christmas party, he's going to claim you're stalking him, threatening him, and interfering with his business relationships. She picked up her purse. Unless, of course, he becomes too busy dealing with his own legal problems to worry about yours. She started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Mr. Merrick? Your wife's friend Amanda called me yesterday. She wanted to know if I was planning to divorce Grant. When I asked why, she said she was exploring her options. What does that mean? It means Amanda has been planning her own moves in this chess game. The question is whether she's playing for your team or theirs. Patricia smiled coldly. I suggest you find out before she makes her next move. I sat in the coffee shop for another hour after she left, staring at the envelope and thinking about alliances, enemies, and the difference between justice and revenge. By the time I left, I'd made my decision. The next morning, I arrived at work early and went straight to my computer. The financial documents Patricia had given me were detailed, but they only told part of the story. If Grant was really embezzling from Pinnacle, there would be digital evidence, email communications, file transfers, database modifications. Finding that evidence would require access to systems I wasn't supposed to touch, but it would also require someone with administrative privileges to cover my tracks. I picked up my phone and called Amanda. Colton, thank God you finally called me back. We need to talk. Yes, we do. Can you meet me for lunch? Somewhere private? Of course. Is everything okay? You sound different. Everything's fine. I just have some questions about Grant and Lara, about how long you've known what was going on. There was a long pause. I think I know what this is about. Let's meet at that little Italian place on 2nd Avenue. Noon? I'll be there. I hung up and stared at my computer screen, thinking about Patricia's warning. Amanda was playing her own game, but I didn't know the rules yet. It was time to find out. The morning passed slowly. Grant didn't come to work, probably meeting with his lawyer, as Patricia had predicted. Lara was at her desk, but she kept her head down and avoided eye contact with everyone. The gossip mill was working overtime, with whispered conversations stopping abruptly whenever I walked by. At 11:45, I grabbed my jacket and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Amanda watching me from across the office floor. She looked nervous. Good. Nervous people make mistakes, and I was counting on her to make a big one. The Italian restaurant was nearly empty at noon on a Tuesday, which made it perfect for the kind of conversation I had planned. Amanda was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall. She'd chosen the position instinctively, the spot that let her see everyone coming and going. That told me everything I needed to know about her mindset. Colton, she said, standing to hug me. I let her, but I didn't return the embrace. I'm so glad you called. I've been worried sick about you. Have you? I slid into the booth across from her, noting how she'd positioned herself with easy access to the exit. That's interesting, considering you knew about the affair for months and never said a word. Her face went pale. It wasn't my place to... To what? To tell a friend that his wife was cheating on him? To warn someone you've known for 8 years that he was being made a fool of? I leaned forward, watching her squirm. Or were you too busy planning your own moves to worry about collateral damage? I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Let's start with something simple. How long have you known about Lara and Grant? Amanda fidgeted with her napkin, avoiding eye contact. A few months, maybe longer. How much longer? Look, Colton, it's complicated. Lara made me promise not to say anything. She said she was going to tell you herself. When? After she'd transferred all our joint assets into her name? After she'd secured her promotion? After she'd figured out how to trade up without any financial consequences? I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. Or after you'd figured out how to benefit from the situation? She stared at the phone like it was a snake. What is that? Insurance. See, Amanda, I've learned something interesting about you over the past few days. You're not just the office gossip. You're the office information broker. You collect secrets and you trade them for favors, promotions, and protection. That's not true, isn't it? Let's talk about your conversation with Patricia Hollister yesterday. The one where you asked if she was planning to divorce Grant. The one where you said you were exploring your options. Amanda's face went from pale to ashen. How did you know about that? Because Patricia and I are working together now. Because Grant's wife has been documenting his affairs for years, and she's very interested in the women who enabled them. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me, Amanda, what options were you exploring? Grant's corner office? His salary? His position as department head? She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it. For a moment, she looked like she was going to cry. Then something shifted in her expression, and I saw the real Amanda, the calculating, ambitious woman who'd been hiding behind the helpful friend facade. You don't understand, she said finally. Lara was going to destroy everything. She was reckless, careless. She was going to get Grant fired and take down half the department with him. So you decided to manage the situation? I decided to minimize the damage. Grant is a pig, but he's a useful pig. He brings in clients, he generates revenue, and he protects the people who work for him. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. But he's also vulnerable. His marriage, his finances, his reputation, it's all built on lies. The right person could control him completely. The right person being you? The right person being someone smart enough to use his weaknesses against him instead of just exposing them. She glanced around the restaurant, then back at me. Lara was never going to leave you, Colton. She liked having her cake and eating it too. She would have strung Grant along indefinitely, taking his money and his promises while keeping you as her safety net. But that wasn't good for your plans. My plans required a clean transition. Grant needed to be available, and Lara needed to be gone. When you caught them at the Christmas party, you actually did me a favor. I felt a chill run down my spine. You set that up. You made sure I would be there. You made sure I would see them together. Amanda smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. I may have mentioned to Lara that you were working late and wouldn't be at the party, and I may have suggested to Grant that it would be safe to be more demonstrative with his affections. You manipulated all of us. I created an opportunity for the truth to come out. What you did with that opportunity was your choice. She reached across the table and touched my hand. But it doesn't have to be adversarial, Colton. We both want Grant to pay for what he's done. We both want justice. Justice? Or just a different kind of manipulation? Does it matter? The result is the same. Grant loses his job, his reputation, and his freedom. Lara loses her meal ticket and her future, and the people they hurt get to watch them fall. I looked at her for a long moment, seeing clearly for the first time. Amanda wasn't the helpful friend or the office gossip. She was a predator, just like Grant, but smarter and more patient. What do you want from me? I asked. Access. Grant has been embezzling from the company for years, but the evidence is buried in the computer systems. I need someone with your skills to find it and document it. And in return? In return, I make sure the evidence gets to the right people at the right time. I make sure Grant goes down hard and publicly. And I make sure you're protected from any retaliation. I picked up my phone and stopped the recording app. That's a generous offer, Amanda, but I have a better idea. What? How about I turn this recording over to HR and let them decide whether you're a valuable employee or a liability? I stood up and put on my jacket. Or better yet, how about I send it to Grant and let him know exactly who's been planning his downfall? Amanda's face went white. You can't. I was trying to help you. No. You were trying to use me, just like you used Lara, just like you were planning to use Grant. I picked up the phone and put it in my pocket. But here's the thing about chess players, Amanda. Sometimes the pawns figure out the game. I started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Amanda, Patricia Hollister sends her regards. She's very interested in meeting with you. Something about conspiracy charges and accessory to embezzlement. I left her sitting in the booth, staring at the empty space where my phone had been. As I walked back to the office, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. For the first time in months, I was the one holding all the cards. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. How did it go? I typed back, better than expected. Time for phase 2. What's phase 2? I smiled as I typed my response. Public execution. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. in the main conference room. Every employee of Pinnacle Marketing would be there. Executives, managers, sales staff, support personnel, and one very determined IT analyst with a laptop full of evidence. I'd spent Tuesday night and all of Wednesday compiling everything. Grant's embezzlement records, Lara's expense account irregularities, Amanda's manipulative emails, and the security footage that tied it all together. Patricia had provided additional financial documents, and Jake had helped me organize everything into a presentation that would have made PowerPoint proud. The conference room was packed, with people standing along the walls and crowding around the back. I sat in my usual spot in the cheap seats, back row, corner position, invisible to the executives at the front table. Perfect. CEO Margaret Walsh called the meeting to order, her voice carrying easily across the room. Thank you all for coming. We have several important announcements today, including some personnel changes and policy updates. I waded through the quarterly revenue report, the new client announcements, and the policy changes regarding expense accounts. Grant wasn't there. He was still suspended pending the HR investigation. But Lara sat 3 rows ahead of me, looking miserable. Amanda sat near the front, in the section reserved for department heads and senior staff. She kept glancing back at me, her face pale with anxiety. Finally, Margaret said, I want to address some recent concerns regarding employee conduct and company policies. Linda Morrison from HR will be leading a comprehensive review of our procedures, and we expect full cooperation from all departments. Linda stood up, her expression grim. Thank you, Margaret. As many of you know, we've been investigating allegations of policy violations involving senior staff members. These investigations are ongoing, but I want to assure everyone that Pinnacle Marketing takes these matters very seriously. I raised my hand. Linda looked surprised. Yes, Colton? I have some information that might be relevant to your investigation. I stood up, my laptop in hand. With your permission, I'd like to share it with everyone. A murmur ran through the room. Margaret frowned. Colton, this isn't really the appropriate forum for... Actually, I think it is. I walked toward the front of the room, noting how Amanda shrank back in her chair. See, the violations you're investigating don't just involve 1 or 2 people. They involve a systematic pattern of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy that goes back 3 years. Colton, Linda said sharply, you need to stop right now. This is not... It's exactly the right time. I reached the front of the room and turned to face the crowd. Because everyone in this room deserves to know how their company has been betrayed by people they trusted. I opened my laptop and connected it to the projection system. The first slide appeared on the wall-mounted screen. Financial fraud at Pinnacle Marketing, a case study. Margaret started to stand. Security, please escort Mr. Merrick from the building. I wouldn't do that if I were you, I said calmly, because the FBI is very interested in this information, and interfering with a whistleblower complaint is a federal crime. That stopped her cold. The room went completely silent. Thank you. I clicked to the next slide, which showed a timeline of Grant's embezzlement activities. For the past 3 years, Grant Hollister has been systematically stealing from this company through fake consulting contracts, inflated expense reports, and kickbacks from vendors. The next slide showed bank records and financial transfers. The total amount stolen is approximately $400,000, which Grant used to fund his lifestyle and his extramarital affairs. I could hear gasps from around the room. Amanda was staring at me with undisguised hatred. But Grant didn't work alone. I clicked to the next slide, which showed email communications between Grant and several staff members. He was assisted by employees who helped him cover his tracks, falsify records, and intimidate anyone who asked questions. The next slide showed Amanda's emails, including her communications with Grant about managing the situation and controlling the narrative. Amanda Chen, who many of you know as a helpful colleague and trusted friend, has actually been Grant's accomplice for 2 years. She helped him identify vulnerable employees, manipulate company records, and plan his exit strategy. Amanda stood up, her face flushed. This is all lies. He's making this up because he's angry about his divorce. Am I? I clicked to the next slide, which showed security footage of Amanda entering Grant's office after hours. This footage shows Amanda accessing Grant's computer on 17 different occasions, always after normal business hours, always when security was minimal. The next slide showed the results of digital forensics analysis. Each time she accessed his computer, files were modified, emails were deleted, and records were altered. She wasn't just helping Grant steal money, she was helping him frame other employees for his crimes. The room erupted in angry voices. I could see people turning to stare at Amanda, who had gone completely white. But the most interesting part, I continued, raising my voice over the noise, is what Amanda was really planning. I clicked to the final slide, which showed Amanda's recent communications with Patricia Hollister and several other people. Amanda wasn't trying to protect Grant. She was planning to replace him. She was going to let him take the fall for the embezzlement while positioning herself as the whistleblower who exposed the corruption. I looked directly at Amanda. She manipulated my wife into having an affair with Grant, then manipulated me into exposing that affair, all so she could create the chaos she needed to take over Grant's position. Amanda was backing toward the exit, but the crowd had closed in around her. You can't prove any of this. It's all circumstantial. Is it? I pulled out my phone and played the recording from our lunch meeting. Her voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. My plans required a clean transition. Grant needed to be available, and Lara needed to be gone. The room exploded in angry shouts. I could see security guards moving through the crowd, but they were heading for Amanda, not me. Margaret Walsh stepped forward, her face grim. "Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. We need to handle this in an orderly fashion." It took several minutes for the room to quiet down. Amanda was gone. She'd slipped out during the chaos, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard the evidence. Everyone knew the truth. "Colton," Margaret said, "I assume you have copies of all this evidence." "Multiple copies. The FBI has everything, along with the SEC and the IRS. I've also provided copies to the Seattle Police Department and the King County Prosecutor's Office." "And Grant?" "Will be arrested as soon as he returns from his meeting with his lawyer, which should be in about," I checked my watch, "10 minutes. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Package delivered. Fish is in the net." I smiled and put the phone away. "Actually, make that 5 minutes." Margaret looked around the room at the shocked faces of her employees. "I think we can consider this meeting adjourned. Department heads, please remain behind. Everyone else, please return to your workstations and await further instructions." As the crowd filed out, I could hear whispered conversations and angry voices. Lara pushed through the crowd toward me, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this?" she demanded. "You've destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied calmly. "I just revealed what was already broken." "But Amanda was my friend. Amanda was using you, just like Grant was using you, just like you were using me." I packed up my laptop and headed for the door. The difference is, I finally figured out the game. As I walked back to my cubicle, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone was buzzing with messages. Reporters, lawyers, FBI agents, and friends who'd heard about the meeting, but there was only one message I cared about. It was from Patricia Hollister. "Grant was arrested 20 minutes ago. Thank you." I typed back, "Thank you for the partnership. Justice served." As I sat down at my desk, I noticed that Lara's cubicle was empty. Her personal items were gone, her computer was logged off, and there was an envelope on her chair with her resignation letter. Amanda's desk was also empty, but hers looked like she'd left in a hurry, papers scattered, drawers open, coffee cup still warm. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the office. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged here, not as the invisible IT guy who fixed problems quietly, but as the person who'd had the courage to expose the truth. My computer chimed with a new email. It was from Margaret Walsh. "Colton, please see me in my office at your earliest convenience. We have a position to discuss." I smiled and stood up. It was time to collect the rewards of being unpredictable. 3 hours later, I walked out of Margaret's office with a promotion, a raise, and a new title, Director of Information Security. My first assignment was to conduct a complete audit of the company's systems and identify any other potential security risks. As I drove home through the Seattle traffic, I thought about the past week. 7 days ago, I'd been the invisible man, ignored, cheated on, and taken for granted. Today, I was the guy who'd taken down a criminal conspiracy and saved his company from financial ruin. My phone rang. It was Jake. "So," he said without preamble, "how does it feel to be the hero?" "It feels like justice," I replied. Cold, calculated, and completely satisfying. "And the divorce?" "Lara signed the papers this afternoon. No contest, no alimony, no shared assets. She just wants it over." Smart woman. Finally. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in the car for a moment, looking up at my windows. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to going home. "Jake?" "Yeah?" "Thanks for the lessons. All of them." "Anytime, brother, but I don't think you're going to need them anymore. You've figured out how to fight your own battles." I hung up and walked toward my building, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. The invisible man was gone, replaced by someone stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. As I unlocked my door, I found an envelope that had been slipped underneath. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "Colton, I know we'll probably never speak again, but I wanted you to know that I'm proud of what you did today. You saved a lot of people from getting hurt, and you did it the right way. I hope you find happiness. Patricia." I smiled and added the note to my growing file of evidence and memories. Tomorrow I would start my new job and begin the process of rebuilding Pinnacle Marketing's security systems. But tonight I was going to order pizza, watch a movie, and enjoy the silence of a home that was finally completely mine. The invisible man was gone. Long live the man who fought back.